What's going on, guys? H-Dub here, and this is How to Raid. Now, I wanted to put this series together so early game players would have an idea of what they could do, get a little bit of guidance without having to search everywhere far and wide, because a lot of the content that creators are putting out is kind of spread out. I don't really see anything that's much of a detailed course. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. This episode is going to be about picking your starter, which starter is going to be viable for you. We're going to look at the champions, look at their skills, so you can make the decision to see which champion you actually want to pick, which one is going to be most beneficial for your account. Now, Kale is by far everyone's favorite starter for very obvious reasons, but not so obvious if you are just starting this game, if you have not watched a YouTube video about this game, and if you have never played a game like Raid. Let's take a look at his kit first. He has on his A1 attacking one enemy and an 80% chance of placing a small poison debuff. There's also a bigger poison debuff that is 5%, which does 5% damage instead of the 2.5%, and this can also be booked up to 100% chance. On his A2 ability, he attacks all enemies, has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, which means that this ability only needs 85% crit rate. He does not need 100% crit rate for this to be a critical hit. And he also fills the turn meter of this champion by 25% for each enemy killed, so awesome skill there. His A3 attacks 4 times at random and has a 40% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns, which is an amazing skill as well. He also has an aura, which all of the starter champions have, which gives ally HP in all battles 15%. All of the starter champions have the same aura. Now, Kale is definitely one of the starters that has a kit that can be used all around in this game. You can use him for nuking in arena. You can use him for account progression very efficiently. You can use him in the clan boss to get some damage there as well in the early game. So definitely probably the most viable starter to pick for any account. Some people have their preferences and choose not to pick Kale, but that is because they don't want to make it too easy on themselves. Getting Kale obviously is the most beneficial to every account, despite what anyone says. Let's look at the next champions. The next champion we're going to look at is Elhane, who is actually my personal favorite for starting out, just because I think she is a little better for campaign progression and arena progression in the early game. Kale is still great. They all have this ability to inflict an extra 15% chance of a critical hit on their A2. So all of the starters only need 85% crit for their nuke ability, but I really like Elhane just because she attacks twice on a critical hit on her A1. Her A2 is going to attack one enemy, then attack all enemies, and she's going to place an increased crit rate buff on herself if she kills a target, which she normally can. And her A3 is an AoE ability, which means it attacks all enemies 2 times, which is a very powerful skill. She also has a base speed of 107. Now, Kale had a base speed of 103, and what base speed does when you add speed sets or you get an increased speed buff, that is going to go based off of your champion's base speed. So a champion with a higher base speed is always going to be more beneficial and get more from those buffs and turn meter increase than someone with a lower base speed. Let's look at the next champion. So the next champion we're going to look at is Elhane, who some people also favor very early in the game. On her A1, she attacks one enemy 3 times, has a 75% chance of placing a 25% weaken, which lasts for 2 turns on the last hit. Now, weaken is a very powerful debuff. This can also be booked up to 100% chance, which is great because you want to be able to place this weaken. A very powerful debuff. It can help you to do more damage. On her A2 ability, she has an AoE which attacks all enemies, and of course has that extra 15% chance of placing a critical hit, of inflicting a critical hit that all of the starters have. Her A3 ability places a 25% increased attack buff on her, as well as a 30% increased defense buff for 2 turns if this champion's current HP is less than 50%. It also gives her an extra turn. This ability is why a lot of people do choose her in the beginning, because she can get the increased defense and the increased attack, giving her the ability to do a bit more damage and take that extra turn. Her base speed is 104, so still below Elhane, but still viable. Let's look at the next champion though. Now the last champion that we're going to talk about is Gaelic, who is the most advertised starter, which is very deceiving because he might be the least beneficial of all the starters, even though he does have a small decreased defense ability, which can be very useful. I think the other starters are a bit better for early game progression, but let's take a look at his kit. He attacks one enemy 2 times on his A1. He attacks all enemies and has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, and plays an increased speed buff on himself for 2 turns on his A2. And his A3 attacks 4 times at random and has a 30% chance of placing a 30% decreased defense, has a 30% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense if the target has more than 2 debuffs on them, which can be a very useful skill, but it is on a 5-turn cooldown, which is why I would not pick him, because this cooldown here is not great for fast progression, and you want to be moving through things as fast as you can. This game always finds a way to make things slow for you, and so I think the other champs are more viable for fast progression just because their cooldowns are better on their skills. He also has a low base speed. One thing that I do want to do quickly is just look at the base HP and base attack of each champion, because I did not do that, but it is going to be very important because how you gear them is going to scale off of their base stats. So really quickly, let's just take a look at their base stats. So Gaelic has 13.7 HP, 13.7k HP, and 1200 attack. Aethel has 13.5k base HP and 1189 on the attack. Aethel has 14.3 and 1.2k base attack. Kale has 13.7k HP and 1200 even base attack. So this is why I favor Elhane. Even though Kale is the best for overall progression, Elhane is the one who's going to be able to do the most damage for you with the basic gear that you're going to get at the beginning, just because she has a higher base attack, and those gear pieces that you put on her are going to scale off of this base attack. I believe she also had the highest base HP as well, and the highest base speed, so something to look out for. She definitely gets eaten in the intro video, which is deceiving because she actually has the best stats out of all of the starters. So I would advise you to either pick her or Kale. Kale is definitely better because you're going to want to be able to do some damage in the clan boss, and that poison debuff that he brings helps to do a lot of damage. So either Kale or Elhane. Aethel, so-so, and Gaelic is definitely a no, dog. But look out for the next video. We're going to be going over what to do after you complete the tutorial so you can start making fast progression. Thanks for watching, and I hope it helps. Be good and be well.